Do you hate sales? Do you ever worry that you are pushy or that just the idea of sales makes you kind of feel icky and like you're just doing something wrong or manipulating people? That is usually the connection we have with sales. And in turn, it leads to us not closing as many clients, which means we're not helping as many people as we can. Well, today I have Jonny Holsten on, and he wrote the book Fix Your Broken Sales Calls. And he's going to guide us through his 6-step framework called the Bridge Selling Framework that is going to completely revolutionize how you conduct your sales calls. My name is Craig, and I'm the owner of Dacey Financial Coaching. Our team is on a mission to make your therapy practice permanently profitable. If you own a solo or group practice, we're here to help you build a business that creates more time, makes more money, and serves more people. This is the Therapy Business Podcast. All right, Jonny's here with me. Jonny, thanks for joining the podcast.
Craig, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation and looking forward to what we get into.
Yeah, same, because sales is a conversation I think a lot of people who probably click to listen to this were still terrified to even listen at all, because there's just, I mean, this is your world. There's just something about it that when you hear that phrase, either you're like, yes, I love it, or it's, I want to turn and run. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, people either love it or they hate it, or somewhere in between, but it's usually one of those two sides.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's start with just tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What's your company? Just give us a little peek into the background of Jonny.
Sure. Well, my name's Jonny Holsten. I run Bridge Selling, and we have the Bridge Selling Framework, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about today. But my background actually began in marketing. So I originally started helping marketing teams with the StoryBrand framework. I'm not sure if you've ever talked about that on the show or familiar with it, but the StoryBrand framework, I'm licensed in it. Was licensed in it for a while. That was was practicing that primarily for several years. That was where I started. So I'd help marketing teams figure out what should we be saying to attract the best fit lead that wants to do business with us. And after doing that for a long time, I realized, all right, even when we're attracting the best possible lead with a clear message, closing sales, it's not a guarantee. It's not automatic. And so that's where I started doing both. We'd work on marketing messaging and then help sales teams take those leads and build a sales process that would close a little bit easier organically. And started to see some huge wins in the sales space, and really just started having fun with that and decided to focus on that. And that's been my last several years now, is helping business owners and sales teams get great at selling. And then today, I think we'll talk more about maybe some more solo sellers, but that's been my background the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I'm a big fan of Donald Miller and his StoryBrand stuff. I've DIY'd my website to a point, but that's usually anytime I was writing proposals or emails, it was going through that whole marketing process of just simplifying messaging and focusing on the client's needs, which is interesting how that's not always innate, right? We're not right. That's not always our tendency.
We don't think that way. By default, we don't always think that way. So Donald was, I've gotten to know him a little bit, and the team over at StoryBrand since just being certified with them, and he was nice enough to endorse my book and everything. So I have mad respect for him, and always am excited to talk StoryBrand with folks.
Yeah, well, I love that. Well, and so that was really kind of what draws the right people in. And then it sounds like what you found was even though the right leads were coming in and getting on calls, they weren't always closing, and that leads to another breakdown of some kind.
That's it. So either we'll see one of two things. We know that well over 50% of companies have no standard sales playbook. So if you ask them how you sell, what are the steps, most people can't even tell you why they succeed despite not having a great sales process. And so that leads to either low close rates way lower than they should be, or long sales cycles that require way more work and way more follow-up. And once I started seeing that, I just started asking, well, what can we do to stack the deck in the favor of whoever's selling and put them in a situation where sales processes become as short as reasonable and close rates go way up, not with any crazy, flashy, Wolf of Wall Street type tactics, but more so just by creating a process where it doesn't feel like a sale. It's just sort of a repeatable. I like to talk about the assembly line. It's an assembly line instead of a slot machine, where you're not just having a conversation, hoping it closes, and then moving on to the next, right? There should be an assembly line for selling.
Man, that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like I was stuck in that, just like, "All right, I got a sales call. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. Let's move on to the next one." And there
Mhm.
was a long time where I was spinning my wheels, in frustrations around that. There was leads
Yeah.
coming in, but wasn't closing them, and, so sounds like you've really worked on that, and that is that what led to this whole bridge selling framework that you created?
Yeah, well, we realized it didn't matter, it really did not matter the industry, the context, the product. There were 6 things that lead to a closed sale no matter what, and that was the salesperson's ability to pinpoint the pain of the buyer. You need to understand the real problem you're solving. True qualification, so the ability to either rule in or rule out somebody from your buying process and having a clear definition of that. After that, it's the seller's ability to connect your services with the pain point of the buyer, the one that you discover. Q&A, so clear two-way discussion about the product, the process, the price, all that. And then clear next steps followed by a call to action, so either closing the deal or scheduling the next conversation. Once we figured out, all right, across all industries and all sales conversations, whether it's a discovery call, a software demo, an introductory consult, whatever you call it in your industry or your space, those 6 things need to happen. So we just brought it back to how can we create a model and a framework that makes it really easy for somebody to follow and achieve those 6 things without getting in their head, without getting nervous, without feeling weird about it. And that's the basis of the bridge selling framework.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, in my experience too, it's just myself and even with clients is that they're afraid of being pushy. And so sometimes that having just this model, this framework, it's almost like here's the 6 phases that we're just kind of guiding them through. And even just how you're discussing them. It's about their pain points. It's about how we can help solve those. That's not I'm trying to shove this product or service on somebody who probably doesn't need it or doesn't want it. It's
Yep.
we're by the time you get to that sell, it sounds like you've built a relationship, at least in that one little call, to where it's no longer, it's like, okay, great. Actually, what I do is exactly what you're looking for. Is that right?
That's right. It should be objective. Our job is to get as much subjectivity out of the sales process as possible. And so, all those 6 things that I just described, we turn that into a scoring rubric. And when you look back on all your deals, you can be thinking across those 6 categories. Was it pain point discovery? Was it qualification? Was it clear next steps? All those things. You can either grade yourself, red, yellow, or green. It's super, super simple. Red was you skipped a step. Yellow was you got into it, but you didn't succeed. And green was that you knocked it out of the park. And we always encourage green should be a high standard. You should know exactly what a green is, exactly what a yellow is, and exactly what a red is. We help sellers and companies figure that out for themselves and make it custom to their situation. But once you have those things in place, it's objective. You don't have to doubt your skills or you don't have to live in the I'm not sure why that didn't close. You can assess a deal, know exactly why it didn't close, and then go back if it makes sense, or go into your next one with the right state of mind. So the whole process is of those 6 things, you can retitle it to match your industry, or you can rename those things to fit your product and your buyer and do things to make it very unique to what you sell. But it is very simple and it's not too hard to become very good at it.
Yes, and even, as we talk about your first step in that framework, which is pinpointing the pain point, in the therapy industry, whether it's physical therapists, whether it's mental health therapists, I feel like that's a pretty on point. That's genuinely why people are coming to you. Whether it's I literally my pain point is this hip issue, or my pain point is this trauma that I'm dealing with. It's a pretty That's going to be a vital key. However, I do think that a lot of people tend to skip over that. So, talk me through that first, the pinpointing the pain point. What are any recommendations there? Any mistakes you commonly see? What's the key to that
Yeah.
phase?
There are 2 mistakes, and I would caution your listeners. One, you're spot on in that people are coming with that information a little bit easier in your industry than others, right? Like, "Hey, my hip is hurting," or "I'm struggling with this specific, hurdle in my life." And when we think of the whole idea, the whole paradigm shift of what's a yellow, meaning you did okay, and what's a green, meaning you were exceptional, I want everyone to ask, what would a high standard of exceptional service and execution be in your sales process? And 2 ways to enhance that and level it up would be taking a moment to pause and confirm the pain point. So even if you're sitting with someone that is
Mm.
gushing pain points on you, that might be a yellow. You've got an idea of it. A green might be you're actually going to slow the conversation down and you're going to say, all right, um, sir or ma'am, thank you for sharing. From what I'm hearing, you're telling me A, B, C, and D. Am I hearing you correctly? And what else did I miss? An example of asking that question, what else did I miss? Could be a huge differentiator in learning even more about them rather than moving forward too fast. So that's an example of something you can institute and say, every single person, after I learn their background, I'm going to ask, what else did I miss? That's a way to take it to the next level. And then also, especially on like the physical therapy side, knowing the difference between, we'll use your example, my hip is hurting me versus my hip is hurting me and that's preventing me from walking up the stairs because my
Mhm.
grandson lives on the second floor of an apartment, right? Like learning those extra
Oh, yeah.
contextual pain points and stakes take it to the next level. So every industry has their own example of that. And if you get that right, you build massive connection with your buyer and everything else gets easier.
That's awesome, and yeah, even that even to you're almost making me realize it's not as simple as it may seem, and even those listening, it's not
Sure.
as simple as just the hip. Maybe that's yes, that's the surface pain point. Maybe that's why they booked the call, but it sounds like our role is to get to that deeper rooted problem of why is that a problem, and helping them even come to terms or realize there's deeper solution. Like I really
Yep.
do need to solve this because I'm missing time with my grandson, or I'm missing X, Y, and Z. Fill in the blank. Um, that's
You
great.
nailed it. Yep.
With the pain points, so if somebody's vomiting a bunch of different pain points? Because I've had those calls where it's like, oh, this and this and this, and they just start dumping everything. Do you try to address all of them? Do you then try to get to narrow down to figure out what's the top pain point? What's that look like?
Yeah, this is another one where a seller is tempted to you can get confusing. And if you throw too much at somebody, like just like we've talked about with messaging, if you confuse someone, they're going to get overwhelmed and you're probably going to
Mm,
lose them and walk away. What we recommend is pick your top 3, and if you can pick up on maybe someone's got 10 pain points, that's great. You don't need to offer 10 solutions. You could offer one, or you could give one main solution and offer a little bit of context on it that's going to solve all 3. You don't necessarily need to match every pain point with a solution.
mhm.
Instead, be thinking, how can I combine everything I have to offer into one succinct solution that's going to solve everything? That's the gold standard you're really looking for there. Yellow might be, okay, here's, all these different things we're going to do during our session. Green would be, we're going to bundle that, give it a name, and talk about how it's going to solve all the problems, right? So you don't, if that answers your question, you don't necessarily have to match every problem with one solution on its own.
That's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, somebody's coming and saying my hip's hurting, also my ankle, also my knees are bothering me. But truthfully, what we're going to do is we're going to help you. They all go back to that core problem you kind of alluded to. Like, I want to be able to go upstairs, play with my grandkid. So that's all of that. What we're
Yeah,
offering is going to solve that one core problem that all the other things kind of contribute to. We're going to make sure you're feeling good enough to be able to do those types of things. So, um,
hmm,
yeah, that's awesome. And then last question on this, because I want to move on to some of your other steps.
sure.
But with the pain points, do you recommend getting an idea of those before the call on the intake form? Is that some beside? I know we always lead those, or I always lead the consultation calls with that too. But is that something that it's helpful to know going into a call what those might be, or what do you usually recommend there?
It is. It is. We look at it's a blend of marketing and sales. You don't want someone coming in the door without knowing anything about them. But at the same time, you need to build that personal connection. And I have seen both cases where when marketing is so good, I had someone on LinkedIn one time sort of chirping at me saying, you don't need to confirm pain points with a buyer if your marketing pre-qualifies them.
Mm,
And I can't, I think, he brings up a point, but I couldn't disagree more because it's the same drop off in sales you're going to get. Let's say someone is shopping around different PT offices and they're going to have multiple conversations. Are you going to go with the one that slowed down to confirm pain points and understand contextually how it fits in your life? Or the one who thought, oh, yeah, I know all about them because of the intake form. I'm just going to talk about our packages and our services, right? So I would say it doesn't always get it done. And marketing, even if you have a great idea about pain points, still institute some background discovery work on what chaos are these challenges causing in their life. And then another thing to fit in, even if you get great info from your marketing pre-qualification, is why now? Why are you reaching out now as opposed to 3 months ago, or as opposed to waiting a couple of weeks. That why now question, even if you have that on an intake form, it's still powerful to talk about that in person a little bit. The one, or face to face at least, the one thing I would caution everybody on is, if you do have great pain point discovery in your pre-conversation forms or in your intake, and you plan to rehash and confirm some of them, be careful not to sound like you're just repeating the same intake form, because that
Mhm.
can be frustrating. You want to find a new flavor, at least a new level of depth and connection that you can add into that part of your sales process.
Awesome. That's really, really good advice. I love it. Um, I think the whole why now piece, and I want to incorporate that as well, because I think there is a that idea of
Mm,
what actually, because I mean, getting on a sales call, getting from the buyer's perspective or the prospect side, that's a lot. I don't jump on calls with people unless I am genuinely at the point where I'm like, all right, something needs to change. I'll be secretly dealing with a
yep,
problem way too long before I'll actually get on a call and talk to a stranger about it. So um, that's
absolutely.
great. Yes. So qualifications is the next step, whether they're ruling them in or out. Talk to me about that. Is that something you're trying to do beforehand, during the call, all the above?
Your marketing messaging should more or less be speaking to qualified people. We use what we call a bridge fit, and a bridge fit is four things: somebody with a pain point you can solve. We talked about that already. Next is someone with the authority and budget to make a full price buying decision. The third is a timeline that aligns with your capacity. And then the fourth thing is sort of a wild card. You can pick a fourth thing if you want to make it a little bit more unique and specific to your brand. And more or less, you should be able to attract mostly that bridge fit in your marketing. If you put your prices online, or you put your packages online, or you talk about the pain points you solve, and you might talk about your availability, you can more or less bring that person in. But in the off chance that somebody slips through the cracks, it's really important that in your mind you turn those 3 to 4 criteria in the bridge fit, turn it into a literal written definition of who you will work with and will not work with, because that's where you go from accepting, maybe getting on a second or a third conversation with someone who should never have been on the first one, or even worse, you close a deal with somebody that was destined to have a poor customer experience because they weren't your true customer in the right place in the first place, and we've all been there. So
Mhm.
having a clear image of that bridge fit and getting really good at confronting it head on, it might be as simple as saying, hey, we're not the right fit for everybody. Let me tell you a little bit about who our best fit customer or client is. You fit that into your conversations, you're going to feel so much better on the tail end when people do say yes. You're not going to have that seller's remorse of, maybe this person wasn't actually the right fit. That's something to think through with qualification right there.
Yeah, that's great. So even just coming in and knowing, having that prepped, and I did an exercise similar to that years and years ago, where I just went through and just kind of going, here's the things we're looking for in client, the people I enjoy working with, the people who get the best results. Well, a huge one for us, and this is still on my sales call, something I'm kind of looking for is, I always say, I call opportunities over excuses, but it's the people who are shutting down ideas constantly. That's just like, this doesn't work and
Yep.
this happened to me or whatever it is. I'm like, they're not going to be coachable, which is then they're not going to be a good client, because then they're going to be frustrated. They're not getting results. But this won't work for me, because it tends to be what they lead with. Uh, so we're in tune with that. And I took on a lot of clients who maybe were doing that on a call, and it turned out to not be the best
Yep.
experience for us. So that's something I'm
For
100%
you,
looking
I would
for.
say that's your fourth thing there. Like, your fourth thing would be they're coachable and they have an
Hmm.
opportunistic mindset. And now you will get really good at asking questions that confirm that, or even being like point blank and saying, "Hey, it's really important to me that I only work with people who are coachable." And that's for both of our success. Even putting it head on, you will save so much time and energy doing that. And for everyone listening, whatever your own version of that is, don't be afraid to hit it head on.
I love that. Yeah, I've never even thought about just coming out and saying it, and making it known. And so that's great. And then you
Mm.
talked about the budget, which I know there's a lot of, uh, especially on the mental health side, therapists can sometimes
Yeah.
feel guilty turning people away because of budget. Uh, but I know it's important, right? They need to be able to afford your service.
Yeah,
It-
you need to be able to. it needs to make all the sense with the numbers. And I know the mental health stuff is definitely tricky, but getting really, really clear around the financials of it can sometimes open up new opportunities to say, hey, for people who can't afford our services, how can we pass them along to the best possible help at a different price range, or even free or low cost, or whatever resources you can have. Even confronting that and saying we can't work with someone below a certain threshold, it will force you to do the thought work of how can we still serve that person? How can we still help them? And
Mhm.
I have a whole list of people who might not be able to afford to work with me or our team, but I still know exactly where I can send them at the end of the conversation to actually get help. And I think that's a great way to tee up the uncomfortableness of qualification. It really should be from the heart of, hey, we have a 30-minute conversation here. I want to hit this right at the beginning because I'm here to help you for the whole chat. But what's most important to me is that you get the help you need. And so our best fit customer is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If that is or isn't you, my number one priority is that if it's not, I can still pass you on to somebody that is able to help you. And that's a great way to sort of umbrella the potential awkwardness of qualification, just with the heart of, I care about you getting the help you need.
Yes, I think that's awesome. Yeah, it's you can help people without taking them on as a client, and I think that is a great mentality
Absolutely.
for people to think through, and
Yeah.
just like, I can still serve this person, I can still get them the help they need without feeling like I have to take them on as someone that we work with just because, the finances are there, and that's okay. So I think that's a great,
Mhm.
great advice, a great tip. I did a webinar about 18 months ago, and learning my intake process and kind of going to this budget piece. We just got hit with a ton of consultations, which was awesome. And then I was
Yeah.
frustrated because our close rate was just, I mean, abysmal. Probably 5% of those were
Mhm.
closing, and it was really bad. And I was frustrated. And my coach kind of went through, we were looking at the data and what they had in common. And it was a lot of them were just really, really small or no revenue yet businesses. And the point was they just
Yep.
weren't the right. And yes, we do work with some clients who are really, really small and they're great, but I would say 9 times out of 10, it's just they can't afford us. And so we had to start putting some levers in place to on our intake process, just kind of making it clear, here's the ideal fit. If you still think you want to try it, give it a shot, that's okay. But um,
Yep.
and then our close rate skyrocketed after that. I mean, so it was just such a huge eye opener. But again, I felt like I still like the little guys. I don't want to turn them away. But at the end of the day,
Yes.
it was killing my confidence. It was carrying into the other ones who probably would be closing. I was going into them just feeling super defeated. And so it was overall just the right fit to go ahead and start vetting them out, ruling them out, guiding them into a different direction.
The energy suck of a non-qualified deal from a financial standpoint is really rough.
Yeah.
It's rough on the person on the other side. It's rough on the person selling, and it's just no fun. And I think it makes all the sense in the world to prevent prevent those conversations if you can, um, or put some thought into, hey, we got 20 leads that weren't a great fit. Could we create a smaller, lower cost offer? Sometimes those thoughts can take you there, but you're right. It's just always better to save the time and energy.
Yeah, it is. And, we sent out emails because we figured this out about halfway through. So we sent out emails to all the smaller ones just because we don't post our pricing largely for a few reasons, but we sent it out to them just kind of saying, here's where our pricing starts. If that's in your realm, we would love to still meet with you. If not, we don't want, because I think to your point too, on their side, they feel defeated at the end. They're like excited. Okay, this person can
Mhm.
help me. And then you get to the investment side, and then all of a sudden it's just like that's nowhere near what I feel like I can do. And so, um,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Let's get to the next one, which is connecting your services to the pain point. So we're going through this process. Now it's how can we help solve those problems? Any suggestions there? What do you normally see?
Yeah, typically it's gonna be one of three things: education on your process, a demo of your product, or some sort of presentation. So thinking of it in that category, and this is where you can get things can definitely go wrong if you don't do it right. But be thinking from your point of view: does it make sense to educate on your process and product, what you do? Does it make sense to demo something, or does it make sense to present something? And think of, where's your energy best? Like, are you the heart of a teacher? Do you want to educate? Do you love presenting and you want to do a couple different slides? Or if you have like, let's say you, for example, you keep going to the PT thing, you've got like insoles or you've got a physical
Mm,
thing, like that would be a demo. So think of, where does your sales process go in one of those three categories? The real key is uncovering those pain points at the beginning so that you're not talking about the hip pain, you're talking about climbing the two flights of stairs, right? Now, as a seller, your job is to be agile. That part of every sale should sound different. Even if you're selling the same thing to everybody, you should be tying it to different pain points.
Mhm.
And that's the thing to really be thinking about. So if I'm showing you this knee brace or this insole, I'm still not talking about the features and benefits and the specific nitty gritties of the product as much as I am talking about the result it's going to have and the pain points. So those two steps 1 and 3 should be very closely connected. Same thing if you're doing slides. You might have the same 3 or 4 slides, but your talking points need to be about the person on the other side and the success and the outcomes they'll achieve. So those are some things to be thinking of. Did you go way too in the nitty gritty of your product, your process, and the details of it instead of tying those things to pain points? That's really the essence of step 3 on the bridge.
That's great. Yeah, it's I think most people probably don't care about the nitty-gritties. Every once in a while, we'll get somebody who wants to see the detail, like, well, what does the dashboard look like? What does the spreadsheet? Most people don't care about that part. They're just like, here's what I'm dealing with. And for our clients, it's
Yep.
we're not profitable. We don't have a cash, like we feel like we're always in the red.
Mm.
Or I'm not paying myself consistently. And then so we're gonna help you solve that. Like we're gonna help you put in a system to solve that. That's trying to keep it as simple as possible because that's what they care about is the end result.
That's the perfect segue to step 4, which is Q&A. So after you talk about solution and success, that's the time to open up and say, "Hey, what questions did I not answer?" Same as like, "Hey, what pain points did I miss? What questions did I not answer?" And that's where you start connecting all these different things where for that person that really does care about specifics, give them the floor. Step 4 is all about literally saying, "I'm going to give you the floor now. What questions did we miss? Ask away," and not shying away from that.
Yes, that's great. And I guess being ready for the specifics. And so for me, it's having maybe those dashboards on hand. So it's like, I can show you, like, if they're like,
Yeah.
what does it look like? What is it? Well, let me share my screen real quick. I'll show you what it all entails. And so, okay, great. So just an open conversation of they can ask you questions. Have you shared the price point at this point? When do you recommend sharing that? Is that in the next step?
It's typically in either qualification. You may mention, "Hey, our prices start
Okay.
at this. Is that doable for you?" And so you may get that out of the way. I actually recommend if you can do that as early as possible, you can have probably a more productive conversation because what's going to happen is the person on the other side, they now have the rest of the conversation to really talk themselves into making the investment rather than using it as an excuse to let the conversation end. So I would say early on, give a starting price point. Like in the first, let's say you have 30-minute conversation. In the first 10 minutes, you want to hit that price point. And then by the time you talk with solutions, they're understanding what they're getting for that. And you can really give them the time and the space to process about why it may be a good investment. If you end up, maybe the price point is higher for that person or lower, certainly in step 3 and 4, you'd want to talk about pricing. I recommend doing it in 3. When you talk about the solution, that's when the pricing should be put in because opening the floor for Q&A, that's an opportunity for the buyer to ask questions about what am I getting? What are the the payment schedule? Can I get a discount if I do it all up front? All those different things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never thought about doing it earlier in the call. I've always towards the end, it's after we've done here's what we offer, here's the solutions X, Y, and Z. Any questions? Great. Outside, it's usually besides investment, what's questions? But I kind of like this idea of leading with it early because I think you're right, giving people space to digest. If you're doing it in the last 5 minutes, um, the last thing I want, I mean, this is what we teach clients not to do is to make an impulse decision on something
Yeah.
that is an investment. And so, um, we need to digest it. And they may come in, especially if they don't know what a therapist charges or they don't know what a coach charges or anything. They don't even maybe have something to anchor it to yet. Yeah.
Very smart. And it's a great opportunity to anchor against others. So let's say you are uniquely priced. And not saying that you're the cheapest, but you might even say, "Hey, most therapists or most PTs are going to run you in this range. And you might even say, we're right in the middle of that, or we're right at the top of that, or we are conveniently lower than that," right? It's just a good opportunity to educate and use, you don't even have to say, "Hey, I charge this." you can even just say, hey, most in this industry charge
Mm.
this. We fall right in this range. It makes it a little bit less personal and a little bit less intimidating if you do it that way. So I'd say hit it head on, because otherwise, what are you thinking the whole time you're on a sales call? If you're the buyer, all you're thinking is, as you're being told about the process and the product, what does this cost? What does this cost? What does it
Yes.
cost? And I think it's really freeing to just hit it right away. In fact, sorry to Craig, I keep going off the rails here, but one of the best success stories that I've ever seen in sales are in the most regulated industries. So financial services, for example, where lots of regulations on who can and cannot invest in a certain product. When we take on a team like that, we had a company triple their conversions in 30 days because literally the first thing they did was tell the buyer, hey, out of respect for your time, I just want to let you know these requirements we have. You have to have $1 million net worth and you have to have $50,000 to invest. Those are SEC regulations for their product. I want everyone listening, think through what might your regulations be. You might not be in a financially regulated industry, but the reason that works so well for those companies is no one is slipping through the cracks that's not a good fit. And it saves everybody's time and energy. And so as long as you can deliver that information in a likable human way, you're going to win big. So start thinking about that
Mm.
for your process. What might your quote unquote, regulation be that forces you to be really clear?
I love that. Love that. That's great. Some just this defining line so that it's just saving you time. You're qualifying them ahead of time. This is great. And I loved your point about even giving a range of pricing because that's, because I do know sometimes, especially whether it's therapist, physical therapy, maybe it just depends on after you get more info what the price would be. For
Yep.
us, I know our pricing changes just depending on size of business, complexity. So it can just be as simple as we charge somewhere in this range and, I think that's really helpful just to even because I do think you're right. There's people on the call the whole time like, "This sounds awesome, but am I gonna be able to afford it? Or
What's
what's
it
it
going to
gonna
run
cost me?"
me? Yeah.
Yes, and so that's almost like a negative loop. It's like they're already saying, well, there's always that chance maybe they're even shutting it down in their head like, "I'm probably not gonna be able to do this," or, "It's probably gonna be out of my realm." So, I think
Yeah.
even just easing that tension at the beginning is a great, great idea. And so that takes us to next steps and call to action. What do
Yeah.
you recommend there?
Well, as you've been following and listening along, I want you to literally think of the four things we've talked about so far. Close your eyes and picture a bridge, a literal bridge. And on the far left, you have pinpoint the pain. And there's 6 boxes across this bridge. That's box 1, pinpoint the pain. Box 2 is qualification. Box 3 is success, solution, and success. Box 4 is Q&A. That's what we've talked to so far. Now there's 2 boxes empty on the right side of the bridge. That's clear next steps, and then close or schedule is how we fill in those last 2
Mm.
boxes. So be thinking about your sales process and your bridge. How can you tweak the names? How can you tweak the titles of each step to make it hyper unique to what you do and who you sell to? Steps 5 and 6, we'll talk about them 2 and 1 here. Clear next steps is very, very simple. We coach on one thing here. It doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur who does all the sales for yourself or you literally have a 100-person sales team. The same thing applies for everybody. Ending that conversation with a 3-step plan, which is step 1 is my step as the seller. Step 2 is your step as the buyer. Step 3 is our next step together. And if
Mhm.
someone's properly qualified, you've had a great conversation throughout. Now it's time to give next steps. Your job is to figure out, is that 3-step plan, is it a plan for closing or is it a plan for a follow-up chat? And if you're used to one call closes, then you should be really good at saying, step 1, I'm going to send you this invoice or the agreement. Step 2, you're going to sign and pay. Step 3, we'll schedule our onboarding session, right? Getting so good at that language. Or step 1, I'll do this. Step 2, you do that. Step 3, we're going to meet again to discuss. If you're used to a longer process, you may need to be good at that. The real key is figuring out how do you actually tee yourself up to give that 3-step plan without it feeling like weird. And the
Mhm.
best way that the way that I've seen the best reps go about it is simply by asking the question, "Hey, sir, ma'am, what I've told you a lot. You've asked some great questions. This has been a great chat. I've really enjoyed our time today. It's been good to get to know you. What feels like the right next step on your end?" And
Mm.
so many times, if you've done your job through steps 1 through 4, they are going to tell you, let's get started. What are the next steps? I'm ready to move forward. Now, all you're doing is responding to their ask. You don't have to ask for the sale as much as you're just responding to their ask. And They might even suggest something like, well, I'd like to think about it, or I'd like to take some time. You can always say, you can always prescribe a 3-step plan that might align more with closing. If you feel like there's just some hesitance, you could even say, hey, I really feel like this is a great fit for you. It sounds like it makes sense. Why don't we go ahead and now give a 3-step plan to push them towards advancing? If that makes sense, you could do it in the right way. So really, it comes down to giving clear next steps. And out of that 3-step plan, you're either ending with a closed deal or another contact, or maybe no longer entertaining the process, which is fine too, because that's a no. So those are the best practices around the end of the bridge.
Love it. Love it. That's great. So I like how the next steps can be fluid, even just depending on, they could say, I'm interviewing another
Yep.
therapist after this call today. So it's okay. Next steps are, I'm going to send you this, you interview that person. Let's circle back, or like, we'll get on a call at the end of this week to whatever. I'm making it up, but so it can even pivot
Absolutely.
on the spot.
You can pivot, and what we call the little, so we got the 6 boxes on the bridge. We actually call the language, we don't worry about scripts. Like, no one should feel overly scripted, but we do have what are called magic pivots. And that is, what are the phrases and the language needed to get from one step to the next? Asking, hey, what feels like the right next steps for you? That's a magic pivot. Even asking, would you like to get started today? That's a magic pivot. And something that, in the context that you just provided, rather than letting somebody off the hook. And if that feels like the right thing to do, absolutely. But you
Mhm.
might also say, "Hey, if you don't mind me asking, I know you're interviewing, what are you looking for? What's most important?" And if they say, I want the cheapest, or I know this other person offers 6 sessions for that rate and you only offer 4, then you can really get down to, and you move back into step 4 of the bridge, which is more Q&A. And you say, well,
Mhm.
let's talk about that. And you can go a little bit deeper and then go back to step 5 and 6 after deeper conversations. So the way we view it is those pivots help you move back and forth, and it's fluid.
Yeah, and you're approaching it with curiosity instead of, that's again not coming across as pushy. It's just, I'm just curious, uh, and just kind of bringing that conversation piece back in, and so that's fantastic. And so closer schedule. So I know sales call, we always think you got to close it, right? That's the key. But it sounds
Right.
like you're saying that that doesn't have to be the end goal, or is there other? Talk to me about that last step. What are you looking at?
The most important thing is that when you look back at your last 10 closed deals, how did that go down? And how did you ask for it in a way that was successful? And as long as you know what that looks like, that becomes your new standard, your new gold standard. And what we always do is think of that whole bridge as a scoring formula. It's not just a stepped plan, it's a scoring formula. So we call what we call the bridge score, which is a closed deal is 100 out of 100, and each of those boxes is worth a certain amount of points. Now, a half credit for step 6 would be you scheduled a follow-up. Full credit, the green, would be you closed the deal. And so what this is really
Mm.
helpful with is thinking through, is this a situation where it's reasonable and it makes sense to close? Like, are all signs green up until this point? Then you should be closing. If there's fogginess on qualification, or they are going to go interview other people, or they are going to do different things that should slow it down, you want to go for that next conversation so you don't get stuck in following up, never,
Mm.
consistently. The acronym BAM FAM, book a meeting from a meeting, is really where this is important here, which is get it on the calendar so you don't have to deal with the scheduling and the follow-up. And just ask yourself, when it gets to the end of the conversation, does it make sense to just close it now, or does it make sense to schedule another conversation? One other point on this would be, you don't have to schedule that next conversation for like a month. You could do it for tomorrow. You could do it
Right.
later today. You could do it as soon as it makes
Mm.
sense. And don't be afraid to, the best way to shorten a sales cycle is just shrink the time between conversations. So don't be afraid to do that either.
I love that. Yeah, so it's just ending the call with some kind of commitment of some kind on their end,
Yep.
whether that's even if the commitment is nope, this is not the right fit. That's at least, there's nothing worse than living in that world of follow up limbo where you can't get a hold of a person, they're not responding, they're still in that, they seemed interested, but now they're not answering anything, and so maybe they were just too polite to say this isn't the right fit. I honestly feel like
That's
even
right.
if they want to think about it, trying to get them and put a call in the calendar, I've found that will suss out the actually it's
It's
then
a forcing function. That's
yes,
it.
because
That's
if
the
they
whole
don't wanna get
reason you
on
do
another
it.
call, then they'll go ahead and just say, "Actually, think this probably isn't the right fit," and you're like, "Okay, awesome, that just saved
Yeah.
me so much time emailing you 1,000 times trying to get you to say something.
Yes. And if they really are too polite, they're going to say yes to the follow up. They're going to accept the invitation, and then they're going to cancel on you 5 minutes before. And at least you know, because you got it on the calendar, at least you can get that level of clarity instead of endless follow up, right? So you're spot on. It's a forcing function. It helps us hold them accountable. It also saves us some admin on the back end.
Man, I love it. This has been so valuable. I mean, I took a whole page of notes here just because I'm taking away a lot. I'm going to go in and start looking at our sales process, and then tell us your next steps and your call to action. Because I know you have a book. I know you work with people. So talk to me about what you do. Where can people go to learn more about what you do?
Bridgeselling.com. You can get the book on Amazon. It's called Fix Your Broken Sales Calls. You can get a free PDF version on our website if you go to bridgeselling.com/book. So you can read it there. If you'd like the hard copy, order on Amazon. We work with companies of all sizes. So if you're small, solopreneur, we'll do some focused one-on-one work with you to help you build out your bridge, build out your scoring formula, understand what your sales process should look like. And if you're a larger team, I think most of this audience is smaller teams, but we also work with larger companies too. It's really the same process. How can we take exceptional sales systems and put it in one that makes sense for your product, your buyer, your product, your process? And we do that. So coaching, training, all sorts of services to help you there.
That's awesome. Yes, I recommend it. I'm going to go buy your book as myself because I love just the simplicity of this bridge framework. I mean, I genuinely, as we go back to even talking about the whole StoryBrand framework, I really feel like you took a overwhelming process of sales and just made it as simple as just follow these steps. Like, we're overcomplicating it. We're overwhelming ourselves for no reason. It should be it's just this simple. It's just a conversation. And so I plan on taking it and reading it. Jonny, thank you so much for your time and your wealth of knowledge. And it's been just awesome having you. Thanks for joining us on the Therapy Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a practice owner that you may know. If your practice needs help getting organized with its finances or just growing your practice, head to therapybusinesspod.com to learn how we can help.